I always knew I was the least favorite in my family, but I never thought they'd erase me entirely. My name is Isla. I'm 32, unmarried, no kids, and until recently, I worked as an administrative assistant at a small law firm. I've always been invisible, I guess, at least to my family. Growing up, I was the quiet one, the emotional one, the creative dreamer, while my older brother Nathan was the golden child. Straight A student MBA at 24, married with 2 kids, the whole package. My parents practically glowed when they talked about him. And me, well, I was just Isla. They used to laugh behind my back. My mother once told a family friend at Thanksgiving right in front of me, Isla, "Oh, she'll probably live with us forever." She has a good heart, bless her, just not much direction. She said it with a smile like it was some charming quirk. I smiled too, even laughed. That's what I always did, pretended it didn't hurt. But it did. After Dad passed away earlier this year, I knew things were going to change. But I didn't expect that. It happened on a Tuesday. I came by the house, my childhood home, to help with cleaning out Dad's things. Mom was in the kitchen with Nathan and his wife Lisa. They looked tense when I walked in, but no one said anything. After a few awkward hellos and some coffee, my mom finally cleared her throat and said, "We wanted to talk to you, Isla, about the estate." I nodded, assuming we'd be going over the will. I had no expectations, just wanted to help. But then Nathan slid a folder across the table. Dad revised his will 2 months before he died. It's all in here. Everything's been handled by our attorney. I opened it slowly, reading line by line. Dad had left the house to Nathan, his life insurance and retirement funds to Mom, his vintage car to Lisa's son, a small donation to charity. And me, nothing. No house, no money, not even a mention. I looked up confused. Is this a draft? There's nothing here for me. My mother shifted in her seat. It's not personal, honey. Your father just… Well, he didn't think you'd need anything. You've always lived simply. And Nathan will take care of you if you ever need help. Nathan added, "We figured you'd understand. You've never really been involved in the financial stuff. It's not your strength." I sat there stunned. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Not even hurt exactly. Just hollow. It wasn't about the money. It was about what it meant. That even in death, my father saw me as the expendable one. That my family believed I had no place in the future of our legacy. Then Nathan casually said, "We're going to list the house this month. Real estate market's strong. Mom will move into my guest house." The house. The house they thought they owned. I looked at them still calm. I stirred my coffee and smiled. "I see," I said. "Well, thanks for letting me know." Nathan looked confused. "You're okay." "Oh, yes," I said gently. "It's all very enlightening." And it was. Because what they didn't know, what no one at that table remembered, was that the house wasn't Dad's anymore. It hadn't been for 10 years. It belonged to me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling of my small apartment, trying to remember when exactly I had become invisible. I thought back to my childhood family dinners, birthdays, school events, and slowly patterns I'd buried for years began surfacing like bruises beneath the skin. I was 9, the first time I realized Nathan mattered more. It was Christmas. I had spent weeks handmaking a scrapbook for Dad, a collection of poems and sketches about our family. I wrapped it myself, added a bow, even wrote a note inside saying, "For the best dad in the world." Nathan gave him a leather wallet he had bought with Mom's help. When Dad opened Nathan's gift, he beamed, hugged him, and said, "This is exactly what I needed." When he opened mine, he smiled, faintly flipped through a few pages and said, "That's sweet, Isla." Then he set it aside. That moment stuck with me, not because it hurt, it did, but because it never stopped happening. At 16, I got accepted into an arts program in another state. My parents said it was too far and probably not a good investment. Nathan's out-of-state business degree, on the other hand, was necessary for a future leader. At 22, I published a short story in a regional magazine. My mom said, "That's nice. You always loved writing." When Nathan got a small promotion, she hosted a dinner party. When I got laid off at 28, they didn't ask how I was. They just told me to move back home temporarily. I declined. I knew what that meant, cooking, cleaning, being the unpaid housekeeper while Nathan's kids wrecked the living room. I stayed on my own. took contract jobs, freelanced, paid rent, paid bills, and somehow that meant I wasn't successful. Then 2 years ago, things changed, at least for me. My boss at the law firm Meredith was retiring and downsizing her firm. She trusted me enough to hand over a few of her private clients, mostly estate paperwork and property filings. It wasn't glamorous, but I learned. I asked questions. I studied state law and home ownership title transfers, revocable trusts. And in the middle of all that, I remembered something. I was 22 when my dad came to me panicked. His business had run into some kind of tax issue. He needed to shield the house from seizure temporarily. I didn't understand much at the time, but he said, "I need to put the house in your name for a little while. It's just paperwork. I'll change it back later." I remember signing papers. I remember asking if it was legal. He said it was fine. He had spoken to a lawyer. And then we never talked about it again. A few years later, when he tried to put it back in his name, he told me there were complications and it was safer to just leave it as it is. But it didn't seem important. I didn't live there anymore, and they still treated it like their home. I thought it was just a legal formality. But when Nathan pushed that will in front of me, acting like the master of the estate, it hit me like thunder. They had forgotten completely. They believed Dad had owned the house, that it was his to pass on, that I was some background character in their grand narrative. They didn't know the title was still under my name. So that night, I opened my fireproof document box, the one tucked beneath my bed behind old notebooks and receipts. There it was, a stamped and signed deed of title, property transfer from Henry Moore to Isla Moore, dated 2013, 10 years ago. And beneath it, more paperwork, county records, notarized forms, follow-up letters. I had kept them all. I didn't even know why. Until now. I spent the next few days checking and rechecking. I visited the county office, confirmed the records, pulled updated title histories. The house the one Nathan and Mom planned to sell was legally mine, not theirs. Mine. There were no liens, no shared ownership, no inheritance disputes. It had never been placed into a living trust. Dad never transferred it back. He had simply forgotten. And so had they. It would be easy to just tell them, confront them. But something in me resisted that. I thought back to the way they spoke to me, that meeting over coffee, their complete lack of empathy. You don't really need anything. You've never been involved in financial matters. It's not your strength. No, I wasn't going to tell them just yet. I wanted to understand what they were planning first, how far they were willing to go. So I smiled and played along. The following Sunday, I visited again. Nathan was showing Mom listings from a real estate agent on his laptop. Lisa was already browsing furniture websites. "Once we sell this place, we'll be able to put a down payment on that lakeside property," I mentioned. Nathan said casually. Mom nodded. "And I'll finally have a little cottage of my own near the kids." I sat on the same sofa I used to curl up on as a teenager and listened to them plan my erasure in real time. They had no idea they were standing on sand. "Have you spoken to the lawyer yet?" I asked, gently. Nathan waved it off. "Already in progress. We're meeting with the agent next week to discuss valuation." I sipped my tea. "And the title you have that?" He looked confused. "What title?" "The house title. To transfer it to the buyer. That's handled by the estate attorney," he said, brushing it off. I smiled. "Right. Of course." Later that evening, Mom pulled me aside. "I know this is a lot, honey," she said softly, "but I hope you understand. Your brother has always carried more responsibility. It just made sense for him to inherit this." She looked at me like I was a child, like she was doing me a favor by explaining it. "I understand," I said. And I did. More than she knew. That night I pulled out a notebook and made a plan. Step 1, contact Meredith for legal backup. Step 2, quietly block any attempts at title transfer using a stop order citing legal ownership dispute. Step 3, wait, because they were going to make a move, and when they did, I'd be ready. 2 weeks later, it happened. I was at my desk proofreading a real estate agreement for a client when an email came through on my personal account. The subject line read contract, more residents. I clicked it open. Attached was a scanned copy of a preliminary sales agreement. Nathan had signed it along with Mom as a co-seller. The buyer was offering $725,000 for the house, all cash. There was a space left blank at the bottom, a third seller's signature, mine. I stared at it for a long time. They still didn't know. They had no idea I was the actual owner. Nathan had sent it with a note. Please review and return with your signature by Friday. We want to move quickly before the market slows down. Thanks. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the document to Meredith, my old boss, and now my legal consultant, and added a simple note: time to proceed. That afternoon, Meredith submitted a legal notice to the title office, placing a temporary hold on any transaction related to the property, citing a discrepancy in ownership records. It wasn't an accusation, just a red flag that would force the agency to pause and investigate before allowing any transfer. And with that, the game began. 3 days later, my phone rang. Nathan. I let it go to voicemail. Then a message from Lisa. Hey, Isla. I think there's been a little hiccup with the house paperwork. Can you give Nathan a call? We need to clarify a few things. Thanks. Still, I said nothing. By the end of the week, I received a formal letter from the estate attorney representing the sellers, aka Nathan and Mom, asking for my cooperation to expedite the sale. Meredith drafted a reply and sent it directly. There appears to be a legal conflict regarding property ownership. Our client is listed as sole title holder according to county records. Please provide documentation supporting your client's claim. The silence after that was glorious. It lasted 2 full days. Then came the knock at my door. It was Mom. I hadn't seen her in person since the coffee meeting. She looked agitated, hair slightly frizzy, makeup uneven. Can I come in? She asked. I let her in, offered her tea. She didn't touch it. Isla, what's going on? She asked. There's been some kind of legal freeze on the house sale. I nodded. That's correct. But why Nathan said you were going to sign the paperwork? I never said that. She frowned. But you didn't object. You agreed the house belonged to the estate. No, I didn't. I just didn't correct your assumption. She blinked. What are you saying? I walked to the bookshelf, pulled out a folder, and laid it on the table between us. Inside were copies of the deed, the notarized title transfer, and the county's current record showing me as the sole owner. I watched her face as she flipped through them. First confusion, then disbelief, then rising panic. This can't be right. Your father transferred it to me in 2013, I said calmly, to protect it from a potential lawsuit. He never changed it back. So legally, the house hasn't belonged to him or you since I was 22. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. I leaned back, folded my hands. I didn't say anything because I didn't think it mattered. I thought we were a family. I thought we cared about each other. But after that will, after being completely written out, after being told I didn't deserve anything, I decided it was time to stop being the invisible one. She set the folder down slowly. You're not really going to block the sale. I already have. But where will I live? She asked, voice cracking. You'll have to speak with Nathan about that. He promised you his guest house, remember? She stood up, shaky. This is cruel, Isla. Your father never meant for you to have the house. Then he should have changed the deed, I said. He had 10 years. Mom didn't say goodbye. She just walked out. That evening, Nathan called. I picked up this time. What the hell do you think you're doing? He barked. Protecting my property. That house belongs to the family. Not you. It legally belongs to me. You can verify that with the county office. This is because of the will, isn't it? No, I said. This is because you treated me like I didn't exist. You made decisions without me, talked about selling my home like I was a stray cat living in the basement. You acted like I was lucky just to be told. This isn't fair, he muttered. We've already made plans. You're ruining everything. I'm enforcing a boundary, I replied. One that should have been drawn years ago. There was a long silence. Then he asked, quieter now. So what happens next? That's up to you, I said. And then I hung up. 3 days later, a letter arrived by courier. Nathan and Mom had retained a new attorney. They were disputing ownership, claiming that the original title transfer had been temporary, and that I was holding the property in trust. No documentation, no evidence. Just a narrative. Meredith and I prepared a formal response with legal precedents, copies of every filing notarized signatures, and proof of property taxes paid under my name for the past 10 years, something they hadn't even noticed. The letter ended with a single line: "Our client is prepared to defend her legal rights in court if necessary." That's when the tone shifted. Lisa called this time in tears. "Isla, please, can we talk? This is tearing the family apart. Nathan's under so much pressure. We're behind on our mortgage. The kids need a stable home. Just think about what you're doing." I wanted to scream at her, remind her that none of them had thought about me when they cut me out of the will, when they signed papers behind my back, when they treated me like a ghost. But I didn't. Instead, I said, "I've thought about it. A lot. And this is the only way forward." The next week was quiet, too quiet. Then, without warning, I received a formal notice. Nathan and Mom were vacating the house. No lawsuit, no appeal, no apology. Just a note saying, "We'll be out by the 30th. And just like that, they left. They moved into a small rental. Lisa went back to work. Nathan took on contract jobs. Mom stopped speaking to me. But I stayed. I kept the house. I repainted the walls, tore up the old carpet, turned my father's office into a writing room. And in the front hallway where our family portrait used to hang, I placed a single photograph. It was me, standing alone in front of the house, smiling. It had been 4 weeks since they moved out. The house was quiet, eerily so, but not in a lonely way. More like a breath finally released after holding it in for years. The silence felt earned. I hadn't heard from Nathan or Mom since the day the movers came. They didn't say goodbye, no note, no message, just gone. But I knew it wasn't over. I could feel the tension still hanging in the air like smoke after a fire. And then, one Sunday morning, it came. A knock on the door. I was barefoot, holding a cup of coffee still in my robe. I thought about pretending not to be home, but curiosity got the better of me. It was Nathan. He looked different, a little older, paler, shoulders slumped like someone carrying something too heavy for too long. "I didn't come to fight," he said. I nodded and opened the door wider. We sat at the dining table, the same one where we'd eaten hundreds of family dinners, laughed, argued, and grown apart without realizing it. "I wanted to talk," he said. I waited. He stared at his hands. "Do you remember that summer when you were 14 and I dared you to climb onto the garage roof?" I blinked. That was not what I expected. "You did it?" he continued. "And you didn't even hesitate. You just climbed up barefoot like it was nothing." I couldn't believe it. I remember I said quietly, "You told Mom I was showing off." He gave a half smile. "I was jealous. You were always braver than me. Not louder, not stronger, but braver." I said nothing. "I've been angry at you," he admitted. "But really, I think I've just been angry at myself. For not noticing, for assuming you'd always just be there. And now that I'm not," I said, "you don't know what to do." He looked up at me. His eyes were tired. "You're right. We were wrong. About a lot of things. Especially Mom. She made me think you were weak, that you couldn't handle things, that you needed protection." I tilted my head. "Or control." "Yeah," he said. "Control." There was a long pause. "I wanted to apologize," he said. "Properly. Not because you won, but because I see it now. I see you." For the first time in years, I believed him. But I also knew it wasn't enough. Not yet. "There's something I want to show you," I said, getting up from the table. I walked to the living room cabinet, pulled out a folder I'd been keeping. I handed it to him. He opened it slowly. Inside were copies of emails, letters, meeting notes, all the plans they'd made about selling the house, the realtor communications, the listing photos, everything done behind my back. Nathan flipped through them, his face growing paler. "I kept them. I said not to hurt you, but to remind myself of what happens when I let people speak for me." He looked at me. "I was gonna let it go, Nathan. I really was. I didn't care about the house. But when I saw that will, When I realized you and Mom hadn't even thought about asking me, it wasn't just insulting, it was clarifying. I leaned forward. You didn't just forget me, you erased me. And you were okay with that. I'm not anymore, he said softly. I know I said. But now you have to understand something else. What? I took a deep breath. You remember when Dad transferred the house into my name, vaguely, he said. I thought it was just a formality. It wasn't, I said. And I didn't just keep the house. I kept everything connected to it, the mortgage payments, the taxes, the maintenance, even the upgrades. I reached back into the cabinet and handed him another folder. Inside were receipts, $3,400 for roofing, $1,800 for plumbing, $5,200 for electrical rewiring, all over the past 6 years. Dad wasn't paying for those things I said. I was. He looked stunned. I've been quietly supporting the house you thought you owned, while you plan to sell it from under me. He rubbed his forehead. Jesus. And here's the twist, I said. The part you don't know. He glanced up. There's a lien on the house. His eyes widened. What filed under my LLC? I said. 2 years ago, for repairs and maintenance provided without reimbursement. It's fully legal. My lawyer insured it. You put a lien on your own house? He asked, confused. I put a lien on the house you were planning to sell without my knowledge, I corrected. Just in case. A backup. He leaned back in his chair, stunned. You planned all this. I prepared for it, I said. There's a difference. He didn't argue. He just sat there, holding the weight of it all. Can I ask you something? He said finally. Go ahead. Do you hate me? I thought about it. I used to, I admitted. When I was younger. When you got all the praise and I got the chores, when you were the smart one and I was the sensitive one, I hated you then. And now I don't need to hate you, I said, because I no longer need your approval, or Mom's, or anyone's. He nodded slowly. I think that's what scares her the most, that she can't control you anymore. She never could, I said. She just thought she could. There was another pause. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said. Just maybe a chance to fix things. Start with yourself, I said. Figure out why you let it get this far. Then maybe we can have a conversation. He stood up. Okay. As he reached the door, he looked back at me. You're a lot stronger than we gave you credit for. I smiled. I always was. The day after Nathan left, I walked through every room in the house. Not to admire it, not to make plans, just to feel it. The sun came in through the windows at a soft, slanted angle. The hardwood floors creaked beneath my bare feet, familiar and forgiving. I paused in the living room, the place where I'd sat cross-legged on the carpet as a child, where my parents had hosted birthdays and holiday dinners, where I'd once been told gently but firmly that I should stop dreaming so much. Now it was mine. All of it. But this story, I realized, wasn't about property. It was about presence. I had been invisible for so long that I almost believed I wasn't worth seeing. And somehow, quietly, I had built a life that didn't need to be flashy to be powerful. Over the next few weeks, I began changing things. The master bedroom, I painted it a rich olive green. Not because it was trendy, but because I'd always loved that color. And Mom had always said it was too dark for a girl's room. I swapped the heavy drapes for airy linen curtains, replaced the stiff dining chairs with ones that invited people to stay longer. I cleared out the attic and turned it into a writing studio. Bought a used desk off Craigslist, hauled it up the stairs by myself, and placed it right under the skylight. Then I did something I never thought I would. I started a writing group. We met every Saturday afternoon. Just 5 of us at first, women in their 30s, 40s, 50s, even one who was 71. All of us with stories we weren't quite sure how to tell. We sat in a circle, shared tea and laughter, and sometimes tears. And I realized I wasn't alone. We were all carrying invisible things: regret, resentment, hope, power. One afternoon, after everyone had left, I received a letter in the mail. No return address. Handwritten in sharp, familiar script. It was from my mother. It wasn't long, just 1 page. She said she was living with Nathan now, that she didn't agree with how everything turned out, but she understood it was no longer her place to argue. Then near the end, she wrote something that stayed with me. I see now that we raised you to believe you weren't enough, and you proved us wrong by becoming more than we ever imagined. I hope one day we'll talk again. But if not, I understand. You deserved better. I'm sorry. I sat with that letter in my lap for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt free. Some wounds leave scars, but scars aren't signs of weakness. They're proof you healed. A few weeks later, I hosted a dinner, not a family one, a chosen one. My writing group came along with 2 neighbors and Meredith, my old boss, who had become a kind of mentor. I cooked pasta from scratch, lit candles, poured wine. Everyone brought something: dessert, a bottle, a story. As we ate and laughed and shared, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror across the room. For a moment, I didn't recognize myself. Not because I looked different, but because I felt different. I looked like someone who had come home, not to a house, to herself. And if you're listening to this, wondering whether it's worth standing up for yourself, wondering whether it's too late to speak, to fight, to claim space, let me be clear. It's not. It never is. They may have left me out of the will, but I wrote my own story, and it's far richer than anything they could have given me.